Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna talk about Dendrobium nobile and some other orchids that need a cool down in temperature. So if you do have these orchids inside your home and you wonder why they don't bloom, I have a full video tutorial that I will link it down below. Today I'll just show you how I reorganize my growing room. Not exactly my growing room, this is just my home, but how I reorganize them when I have these plants and I need to offer them a cool down temperature. So without further ado, let's start. So I have in here two nobiles that are fully matured, and actually they are capable and they are able to bloom and rebloom. And I also have this other orchid here. This is a dendrobium from Australia that also needs a cool down temperature, but this plant has never bloomed for me. I have no idea why. I will add it to the growing room as well. I do have other plants. I have a dendrobium nobile, the Kidaruma, that's actually not super mature yet. And I also have a white dendrobium nobile that it's also been struggling. Actually, I don't think this plant will survive. So when it's winter or winter is approaching, these plants will actually be able to bloom in nature. So if you live in a country where you have seasons and you have dropping temperature at night time, if the temperature goes below 15 degrees Celsius, you're capable of growing Dendrobium nobile hybrids and Dendrobium nobile species. Here in London, I keep the heating on, so all of my other orchids will need to have an intermediate temperature all year round. But these ones here specifically, they actually would tolerate a much cooler temperature, and some of them will need a cool down, a proper cool down to be able to push flower spikes that will go below 10 degrees Celsius. For these reasons, I will grab these plants, I will place it in a room where it has no heating system on and where I can also open the windows from time to time, so I will be able to actually rebloom these plants. That's what I do. So if you live in a place like I do, that it's basically an indoor space with intermediate temperature, and you don't have any room with space where you can actually turn off the heating, or if you don't have any outdoor area, it's going to be more difficult to rebloom these orchids because they do need this differentiation between temperatures to be able to push their flower spikes. As I told you, I do have many other videos about it, but I'll show you how I reorganize my rooms very quickly. So what I have to do is to grab these three beasties here and place them there. Let's start reorganizing the room. I'm gonna show you and we can talk a little bit more about them towards the end of the video. So this is my cool room. What I have in here is a couple of different plants. I have some house plants, I have some phalaenopsis, some paphiopedilums just here. I have Hoyas. I also have my Nelly Adler and my Miltoniopsis. So both of these plants stay in this room because I can protect them a little bit more. However, now that's getting really cold, I need to remove them from this bathroom and I place all of them in my living room. So let's start doing it. The first thing that I will do is remove everything from here. I need to carry everything to the living room, and then I can bring the other plants in. So here we are, like magic. I have here the only dendrobiums that I'm offering a cool down temperature this year. I have to say that these are not true nobiles, they are all hybrids, so some of them are capable of blooming without a proper cool down temperature because of how the hybrids were made. So here I have my yellow canary, that it's a yellow dendrobium. Here is one dendrobium nobile hybrid with purple flowers, and as I mentioned, this one is the species that I've never managed to bloom or rebloom. It's becoming a super tall plant. It's a super large plant. I would love to see some flower spikes, but these are the three plants that I have this year. It's much less than a few years ago. I used to have three other plants, and this room here is quite empty now because I removed all of the other plants, but I have to find a space for them until springtime. Something else that I have to remind you is that when we find a place for these plants or we place them outside and offer them a cool down temperature, it's really, really important that we avoid watering only when we notice that these plants are becoming completely dehydrated. We don't need to let them die. Offer a little bit of water, but otherwise they can go without water for at least a month or even more depending on the plant. So there are two things that we do here is offering them a cool down temperature, offering them much less water, because during the cold season, usually it's when it's the driest season, when we are talking about Atlantic forest, for example. So it's a combination of no watering, having a little bit less light, and the temperature being low will actually induce blooming on these plants. And we can create that artificially. That's how companies will actually make sure that these plants are in bloom all the time in the supermarkets. Very different from Phalaenopsis, for example, that can be just in our rooms, and with a slightly drop in temperatures, they will be able to bloom and rebloom. These ones will need a proper cool down. There are other plants that are not even capable of blooming without a proper cool down. There are species out there. I don't own them. But for these plants, it's really, really important that you have a space outside, an outdoor area, or if you can do something like what I'm doing here with them. The good thing about these plants is, although they will bloom only once a year, from the moment that they spike, they push out so many flowers. The flowers are perfumey, they are colorful, and on top of that, the Dendrobium ovale hybrids are very affordable and popular orchids as well, that we can find in supermarkets, garden centers, and most regions of the world. So if you own one of these plants, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you enjoy seeing how I actually remove the plants from this room, carry them there, change a little bit, change the scenery a little bit, and that's the only way for me to actually make sure that these plants will be able to bloom and rebloom in this season. So if you enjoy this type of content, please hit the like button, leave a comment down below, let me know what you'd like to see here next, and I will come back next week. Bye bye!